Hello and welcome to the next episode of Two Girls Talk Transits. Today we're reviewing the astrology from November 10th through November 16th, and we're your host. I'm Maddie.
And I'm Kaleigh.
And welcome back. So we are finally moving on from all the redundant astrology, I feel like, with Mars and Pluto, but I mean, that was a lot for a lot of reasons. And we do get a kind of significant energetic shift. The start of this week on November 11th, Venus enters into Capricorn, which is some earth energy now. I think we don't even have any of that prior to this, did we?
Besides Pluto, no. And we have Uranus and Taurus still, but that's it.
Yeah, the outer planets don't count. Um, I mean, I think in terms of like your day-to-day energy, probably not. But yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Venus and Capricorn does give a little bit more of a grounding presence into the sky. She does well there. Like she's in triplicity rulership there, so she has a little bit more resources going on, and she can help you get more serious about things that need attention, or whatever Saturn is bringing up to you. We have a lot going on with Saturn this week, don't we?
Yeah, with Saturn being the ruler of Venus here, I think too we can get a little bit more serious about um whatever Venus rules in our chart. So if Venus rules your money, maybe you're getting a little bit more serious about that. Or if Venus or yeah, if Venus rules your relationships, you're getting more serious about that. So it's just adding some kind of structure to those Venus ruled areas in your chart.
Yeah, I agree. And I think like Venus is, helping establish a little more consistency, and she's making the work a little more fun in Capricorn. Like you actually value this work, or you're valuing the output, and you're valuing what you're putting out there, what you need to put time into. And so she brings a little bit more to that table, I think. And so that's going to be a present shift if you do like personally want to make some goals about what you want to get done for the next month. While Venus is in here, like that would be a good time to just be clear and true, like wherever that is with Venus ruling in your chart.
Yeah, I think that's a good point that you made, that she can make things like those structural things feel a little bit nicer. So yeah,
Yeah.
I think she is lightening up the structural space in that way.
It's because we have a lot with Saturn this week. Because the next day on November 12th is Mercury's back in Sagittarius, you know, messing up our information and creating some conflicts there, starts squaring Saturn. And Saturn is also stationing direct this week in Pisces. So that means that Saturn's getting a lot more attention. So everything that you've been working through in terms of what you're building with Saturn and Pisces, what your responsibilities are, what you feel obligated to do, kind of is on the forefront of your mind. And especially on the 12th, I think you're going to have some awareness or limitations or realizations that you have more work to do, or something got shot down. I don't know. This,
Yeah. Well, this is like right before we move, like Saturn moves direct. So I think like rightfully so, like coming at the right time. We have Mercury providing that information about that Saturn retrograde cycle. And like I think Saturn in itself, like Saturn is already isolating. It's already like makes us put in the work. And then retrograded Saturn is like even worse. It's like really, really slowing things down. So I think we are getting like some information about that. And it might feel like I'm ready to like I'm ready to like move past this, which will like gear us up for that Saturn stationing direct following.
right. But yeah, it's just always going to be so slow. And I think it can also be some bad news. Sagittarius, a Jupiter rule sign, and even Pisces, a Jupiter rule sign, like they generally want some optimism or some like faith and trust. And Saturn really wants the clear cut structure and laws. And Mercury here is just, gathering information, but getting lost in the sauce. And Sagittarius, getting way too deep into things. And so it can be a deliverance of bad news. It can be something kind of being not quite what you hoped it to be, or that you realized you were missing a lot of information. And what we got to remember too is Mercury's in its shadow. So it's also going to be making 3 squares to Saturn this month.
Yeah, that is interesting that you say that because I've actually heard of Saturn before being associated with like false reports or like misinformation. So coming into a square with Mercury, the planet of information, I could definitely see how could come up like there's misinformation somehow or it's like bad news, like you said.
Yeah, and it's like with Saturn too, like, around the government, around the laws, around the structure, like something is shared about a current ruling or a current situation, and then Mercury is going to go retrograde and square Saturn again, and it's going to be shot down again or reviewed again. Like, so this is a long-term thing. Whatever does come up around this week, I think, is just to keep that in mind. Like, if it is a really big piece of news that you weren't expecting that was like really bad or not positive and not what you want, there's the opportunity for it to be in revision again.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So
So,
then go ahead.
no, just go ahead.
No, that's all I had to say about that. Did you want to say anything?
I think you're
No.
um no, yeah, then Saturn does station direct November 15th, and that's also the full moon in Taurus on November 15th.
Mm.
I know, let me pull that up real quick.
Yeah, so
So
up on YouTube we have some visuals. You can look at the chart as Maddie explains it.
yeah, so first Saturn is stationing. There is a lot of Saturn elements, a lot within that too is going to trigger Pluto a little bit, just saying, like, because Pluto's ruled by Saturn and Capricorn. And then we have this full moon in Taurus. So the sun's here at 24 Scorpio, the full moon's at 24 Taurus, and it's right next to Uranus at 25 Taurus.
Oh no. Sorry, I like have a personal thing going on with Uranus and Taurus, so I'm like, no.
I mean, I think we should all kind of do like Uranus and Taurus has not been helpful for the United States, for the economy, for the distribution of food and supplies.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
And a full moon here, just literally sitting right on top of Uranus, is one of the most unstabling full moons. The moon's exalted here too, so like the moon is really lunar. Like our feelings are really heightened with
Hmm.
this full moon, and that's just part of Scorpio season too. But then Uranus in the mix, it can be really explosive feelings, really explosive reactions, or something especially maybe related to what Saturn is saying no to, you know?
Mm, that's interesting.
And I know, like I talked about last week with like the around the 7th of November when the moon met Pluto and then came opposite Mars, that being January 6th. It could be even dragged out, like with Saturn making these aspects too. Like, I feel like, results can be really dragged out or progress can be really dragged out. And then this full moon is like this shockwave. Like, you had no idea that this was actually what Saturn was delaying behind the scenes. And now all of a sudden it's like, here's the actual answer, Saturn stationing, and it's a absolute disruption.
Yeah, so you think there's like some disruptive like insight about the Saturn, like what's been happening with Saturn?
Yeah, I think so. I just think those two are connected. Like the messages that we're trying to receive with Mercury squaring Saturn a couple days before this too, and Mercury also slowing down to station. Like there's a lot of mixed messages in the sky. There's Saturn in the background trying to organize the confusing messages and get a clear answer or give you a stern ruling on something. And then a full moon in Uranus kind of it's like, okay, yes, disrupt everything. Like let's just throw that all out the window. I
Mm.
don't know. It's not very stabilizing and it's not very comforting.
Yeah, which is like kind of not what we want with the moon in Taurus. We want it to be like comforting. Like usually when the moon like transitions through Taurus, like even if it's not a full moon, if it's just like whatever transitioning through the sign, like I usually am doing like comforting activities like cooking and um I don't know, other things that like tend to my body or like kind of just slowing down in some way. So I think with it meeting Uranus right here, we're not gonna feel, like you said, that comfort like we want to.
Yeah, I don't think we will, and I think it's just definitely really destabilizing, and there is so much that is going to be again brought into review. I mean, just looking at like Mars at 3 degrees of Leo, Mars is only going to be moving 2 more degrees before it stations retrograde. Mercury is going to be retrograde. And then, like, even looking ahead next year, like, Venus will be retrograde. Like, at least maybe part of what you can ground into for this full moon is whatever does get extremely disrupted or kind of reaches some sort of chaotic point in your life. It's probably going to be reviewed though, and it's probably not an end all final result because there's so much in the sky that's like you were almost getting there, but you're about to turn back around and go get your wallet.
Hmm. That feeling is, yeah, not fun. Yeah, so I guess like if we were to kind of say like give it a fuller picture, um, it would be like, there's something like coming to culmination, but it's incomplete in a way because we need to go back and review.
That's a beautiful way to put it. Exactly. Like
Yeah.
there is something really being brought up and it's different than what you thought it was before. And yes, it's not also, we're not done. Like we are just not done with the work here. Like there is more to this.
Story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, it's one of the, I think one of the last times we had like a full moon in Uranus, like it was an eclipse and it was really disrupting. So at least this is not an eclipse. Like we got that.
Yeah, I mean that is true. Yeah, a little bit less intense, but still full moons in general.
Yeah, so you're gonna be feeling that full moon then until, I mean, for the rest of this week. Ultimately, the 16th, then the sun will be opposite Uranus, so it's just completing the full moon. And, again, awareness is being brought into like something shocking is being brought into your awareness, and something disrupting is being brought here. And, like, how do you implement it? What do you do with that? How do you stay flexible in your life?
Yeah, so it seems like there's a lot of themes about, awareness coming in. And I think,
Hmm.
that speaks, we're still in Scorpio season. So it really is just speaking to that, like uncovering. We are, you know, pulling up the rug and seeing what's underneath that. And I think that is very, on par.
Yeah, I was looking ahead a little bit because I was like, oh, is this the last time that we'll have like a full moon in Taurus with Uranus and Taurus? But it looks like next year we do. I mean, next year we do get Uranus and Gemini, but then we do get a little bit more back in Taurus. But there is something wrapping up too. You could look at, holistically in terms of this full moon of like this long-term thing you've been doing since 2017
With your honest.
through, yeah, with Uranus and Taurus. Like we really are reaching the very last effects of Uranus and Taurus. And for you personally, wherever Taurus sits in your chart and what house it rules for you has been a source of great disruption and significant change.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. And we are, I mean, I think we've talked about this on the podcast before, but in 2025, a lot of the outer planets are shifting to, or all of the outer planets are shifting to different signs.
Yeah.
Um, so we're just gonna have a lot of like change in energy. So I think
Hmm.
that is also something, significant to mention. But so Uranus and Taurus right now, like you said, is wrapping up that cycle. And then we get to experience some new energy with Uranus and Gemini. But we still are at like 26 degrees, I think.
Yeah, it moves pretty quickly though. We'll get Uranus and Gemini. Let me look for sure, but I think it's yeah, in July of 2025. It will retrograde back into Taurus for a little bit that fall. That's what I was looking at.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so there's still a little bit more to do here, but I do think with this full moon so close, it's like kind of this big peak or this big moment of awareness of what you are changing with Uranus and Taurus for you personally. Like, let's
Mm-hmm.
step away from the collective. Like, and part of this full moon is you have to embrace this change. Like, I think that is just in the nature of all the astrology that's going on. Like, if you do sit down, you're like, I don't want to make this change. I don't want to leave this job. I don't want to do this, but I know that's what Uranus and Taurus is asking you to do. Like, you are just, it's going to be more painful for you to move forward, especially with the Mars retrograde, versus if you just kind of cut out what doesn't work and trust that
Mm-hmm.
there's a little bit more movement, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. I think, every planet in transiting through like asks us different things, like ask
Mm-hmm.
from us different things. And some of those things feel a little bit like if it's a Venus transit, it feels a little bit more comfortable, usually, depending on its aspects. But like Uranus is definitely asking us for a major shift. And so we kind of like don't really have a choice. And I feel like Uranus is one of those things that like if you don't act upon it, I will act upon you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And it is like it's the things that happen instantaneously onto you and how can you handle emotional disruptions from
Mhm.
related to that? Like I think that's the big part of this full moon. Like how can you contain these intense emotions related to inconsistency and instability?
Yeah, that's a good point. Like, it's a good time for understanding your coping mechanisms too, like in moments of instability when you don't know like how to really ground yourself. This is, yeah, really good for learning like how do I like calm down when everything around me is in chaos, it seems. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's it for this week. I mean, it's more serious. It's more Saturnian. Like you have work to do. You have things that you need to address if you've been avoiding them. You have things that you need to focus on and get serious on. And then you also have to balance that with a sudden disruption, a sudden thing that really shifts your comfort and stability in a different way. Probably not the way that you're super shocked about because of the long-term Uranus and Taurus transit, but still shocking enough. So, how do you find comfort in the unknown is a really good reflection, I think.
Yeah. I mean, it could be like just bringing up like you might have thought like, oh, I'm done with this like disruption that's been happening in my life with like the Uranus and Taurus, but when that full moon comes and meets, you're like, oops. Not done at all, actually.
Yeah. Yeah, like you didn't finish the work. Like you gotta actually finish this up. You need to actually change, like make that breakthrough. Like, and it's always little breakthroughs on top of little breakthroughs that lead to a really big, oh wow, the last 7 years of my life, I really transformed awareness.
Yeah, that's true also. Yeah. Cool. Well, that's this
Um,
week.
Yeah. All right. So we will see y'all next week. If you want more content from us, we're mostly on TikTok, but also Instagram and YouTube at Two Girls Talk Transits. And I'm on Instagram at Maddie.delray, and my website is maddiedelray.com. What about you?
You can find me heal.on-earth on Instagram, and that is all.
We'll see you all next week.
See you.